a different kind of epiphany. A sermon based on John 2, 1 through 11. Thursday marked the beginning of the season of Epiphany, a time of seeking God's light and glory. Although the church, and certainly not the society around us, will make a big deal of it, this season carries us all the way to Lent. Epiphany itself is a reminder, a remembrance of the Magi who followed a star from the east, guided all the way to Bethlehem, where they expected to find a newborn king, bearing their gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. They sought to pay him homage. And when their travels led them to Herod, they naively thought he would give them direction. They didn't know how they set off a chain of events that would bring death and destruction. But they trusted in the light of a star and a dream that sent them home by a different way. Now, outside the church, Epiphany could refer to any insight that brings clarity or greater awareness. When someone has an epiphany, everything is clear, at least for a short time. Today's message is not about the Magi or about Herod. Jesus is not a helpless infant. There are no enemies threatening to destroy life. No danger at all. Except for the everyday awareness of Roman occupation and oppression that was part of the lives of first century Palestinians. Instead, the story is about a special event, but not out of ordinary awareness. You see, we pattern our years with a sprinkling of holidays. On average, our society has about one major holiday a month, except for August. But statistically, there were more people born in August than any other month, or so I've heard. Here at Ridgeway, we certainly have the 20th covered. But even so, we can go from one event to the next, and holidays themselves can begin to feel ordinary. But then there are special events, like births and like weddings. And the same could be told of the first century. Jews have a lot of major and minor festivals according to the unfolding of months. But weddings can come at any time. They disrupt our ordinary routines in the best ways. Such was the case as Jesus began his public ministry. I invite you to pay attention to the story. On the third day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee. Jesus' mother was there. And Jesus and his disciples were also invited. When the wine ran out, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no wine." But Jesus said to her, "Woman, what concern is that to you and to me? My hour is not yet come." Jesus' mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now, there were 6 stone water jars used for Jewish rites of purification. each one holding 20 to 30 gallons. Obviously, these are not to scale. And Jesus said to the servants, "Fill them with water." And so the servants filled them to the brim. And when they were filled, Jesus said to them, "Now, draw out some of the water and give it to the chief steward." And they did so. And when they took the water that had turned to wine and gave it to the chief steward, though he didn't know where it had come from, but the servants knew, he called over the bridegroom and said, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and then the inferior wine after the people have become drunk. But you have served the good wine now." This was the first of the signs that Jesus performed in Cana of Galilee and revealed his glory. His disciples believed in him. Now, for those of us who grew up in a more socially reserved, primarily or entirely teetotaling culture, this first miracle might be a bit troublesome. It takes place in the middle of a celebration, one that likely lasted for several days, and Jesus' first miracle, according to John's Gospel, is to turn between 120 and 150 gallons of water into wine. It seems like a frivolous use of power. No lives are redeemed. No pain or injury is healed. No demons are expelled or critics quieted. It might even seem like the waste of a miracle. In fact, my earlier prediction or estimation of the amount of wine is wrong. It wasn't between 120 and 50. It was between 120 and 180 gallons of water turned into wine. I don't know how many guests were at the wedding, but if they have already been there for a while and have had plenty to drink, it seems like a bit much. And then there are troubling parts of the story itself, not the least of which is Jesus' address to his mother. Woman. This is the one who gave birth to him, who risked her life to bear him, who cared for him. You'd think that she'd deserve more than the title woman. I tell you this much, if my children referred to me as woman in anything but a joking matter, and maybe even then, it would not be received well. But beyond this, why does she go to Jesus to tell him that they've run out of wine? We might agree with Jesus asking what that has to do with him. Richard Swanson suggests that they might be part of the same clan as the bride or the groom, or maybe both. And if so, in a culture that values hospitality above almost all else, to run out of wine at a wedding would be a great source of shame. Maybe Mary is concerned about sparing her clan potential shame for a long time to come. Or if she's not part of the clan, maybe she's letting him know that there are some here who haven't done what they should to provide hospitality. It isn't necessarily that the wedding planners were cheap or trying to cut corners. If the jars for purification were any indication that they'd empty, there truly are a lot of people there. That much water to purify could be for more than 700 people. Judging from the steward's comments later, they had already been enjoying themselves for quite a bit. Enough so that they would likely not be able to tell the difference between good wine and cheap wine. Whether his mother was trying to spare or spur on a scandal, Jesus didn't want any part of it. But never underestimate a woman, a mother's influence. Without an affirmation or rejection, she told the servants to do whatever it is that Jesus said, knowing that he was going to do something. And so in accordance with Jesus' instructions, they filled the jars for purification with water. I wonder if they thought it was a strange request, and if they muttered to themselves, why should they be asked to do such a strange thing? Because it was a ritual act. It needed to be done in a specific way. It wasn't like they could turn on the tap and just fill the jars. And then the instructions were to take it to the chief steward. I wonder how the steward would have responded if he knew that he was drinking from water from the purification jar. It would be like taking water from the shower and taking it to a sommelier. The servants were in on this joke, along with Jesus and his mother and the disciples, but nobody else knew. And the steward spoke with amazement about the quality of the wine. It's the best, the good stuff. There is no indication in the story that the source of the wine, the true source, was ever revealed beyond those who already knew, or that there was any miracle that took place at all from the perspective of most of the guests. Apparently it was enough that the disciples believed in him. But it may have been completely lost on most of the people who were there. They were all present and all benefited from the miracle, but they didn't even know it had happened. In that sense, it is more like the birth in Bethlehem than the Epiphany. Everyone was nearby, but few understood that something amazing had happened, something miraculous, a sign for others who knew to believe. The Epiphany here was only for those who were paying attention, those who were most observant, and mostly for those who were least likely to be invited to share in the celebration. I'm guessing that the servants had some of that wine, though. So what's the point of the sign? Some suggest that Mary had a more maternal reason for wanting to get Jesus involved when the wine ran out. As she had heard Simeon and Anna prophesy regarding Jesus, she was aware that he would experience hardships. Maybe in true motherly fashion, she wanted this first public miracle to be one of great joy. Whether or not it was her intent, Jesus and his disciples would be able to look back on this moment of community and celebration. John doesn't include a traditional communion story, but instead of having the bread present as Jesus' body and the wine as Jesus' blood, here water is transformed into wine, its own hint of the Eucharist. Jesus would later be called the bridegroom and the church his bride. And Jesus makes sure there's enough wine for the celebration. But maybe more to John's Gospel's point. There is no denying that this sign is about abundance. Jesus would later say that he came so that we might have life. Not just life, but life in its abundance. And John's prologue in chapter 1 said that from Jesus' fullness, we have all received grace upon grace. Jesus' first sign is one of abundance, one that would hint to abundance in other signs, such as living water gushing up to eternal life for the woman at the well, and loaves and fishes that would feed the multitudes. An additional gift of this first sign is that it also depends on others to be involved. Also, like the feeding of the multitudes. It would depend on Mary noticing a need, and the servants doing their part to make the sign a reality. As much as John presents a cosmic Christ, perhaps the least human portrayal in the Gospels, the author of John invites people into this miracle to be partners with it through God's leading. We know that we experience sorrow in life. Not everything is a party. Not everything is a festival or a celebration. But in those ordinary moments, the times when light doesn't seem so easy to come by, when it doesn't feel like glory is shining all around us, isn't it a gift to know that Jesus was not opposed to joy and celebration, that he could party with the best of them for the best of reasons? If we are observant, we might even notice around us surprises for us today, different kind of epiphany. It's not the star in the sky, but parts of our everyday life. And Christ invites us to name what we notice and to be part of providing what is needed when it is needed, we are brought into this secret of incarnation, one that we choose to invite others to see, to smell, and to taste for themselves. May it be so. Will you pray with me? O God, you who turn our ordinary lives into signs of your wonder and glory, we might not feel like miracles. We might not seem so to the world around us or to us ourselves. But as your Spirit lives in us, we are transformed, just as surely as the water was transformed into wine, given as a gift of joy and abundance for all to enjoy. God, use us to bring signs of hope and wonder to others. Let our lives be a gift, a reminder that in the midst of winter, in dark and dreary days, in struggles and sorrows we may experience, your joy lives in us and through us for all the world to see. In Christ's name, may it be so.